Hey there, Jesse here. Welcome to another episode of Science Radio. This week, I'm excited to share with you not just one, but two conversations. Mark Hadley, a regular contributor to Science of the Times and filmmaker, as well as Dr. John Dickson. In the first episode, we'll be talking to Mark about his role as a producer for a brand new film, a documentary called The First Hymn. In the second episode, we'll talk to Professor John Dickson about the same. And these two men have different perspectives. John Dickson is the originator, the ideas man, the guide, and Mark Hadley was a producer. I'm excited to be able to share both these conversations with you. If you're interested, the links for the film are in the show notes. But with that, let's go to our conversation with Mark Hadley.
It was like an Indiana Jones episode. I had to climb down into a subterranean tomb, and what they told me as I was going down was beware of the snakes. Because
what?
I know.
Come on!
I kid you not.
I'm sure you fulfilled the lifelong dreams of many a young person around the world.
It was an interesting moment. My lifelong dream is to wield a lightsaber, but that's for another time. The story for me began on a driveway in one of the northern Sydney suburbs. John said to me, I've got this idea for a documentary. Basically, as they're working through all of this papyri, they eventually turn up this particular piece, and they discover that it's the earliest known Christian hymn. I mean, why would you not want to bring an ancient piece of music from the 3rd century AD into the 21st century? Lots of things went wrong. I don't want to say like it was just a walk in the park. I had hair when we began this production. You know, it's like, it's now...
It's that bad, is it?
It's that bad. No, it was a great process, but even the things that went wrong directed us to better results. And then there's Chris Tomlin, who is another level above that. Quite possibly, according to Time magazine, the most sung artist on the planet. So I hope to wander into a church one day, 10 years from now, and hear somebody singing it, and just be able to be thankful that it's there. Not because we had anything to do with it, but because God brought it back.
Today, I get to welcome back regular contributor and filmmaker extraordinaire. I think I've used that title before. Mark Hadley.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will get used to filmmaker extraordinaire, but thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now, Mark, when we usually have you on the show, we often get you to review a piece of media, whether it's TV or film or other, and it's usually talking about it from a more detached critic's perspective. But this time, it's a little bit different. Today, we actually get to talk to you about a project that you have had a pretty significant hand in making. It's called The First Hymn, and it's an incredible documentary that tracks an ancient manuscript that was discovered quite a while ago, but has had some recent activity around it. Would you be able to just give us a broad overview of sort of where the idea for the project came from and sort of your hand in it?
Yeah, sure. So for those who don't know, look, the first hymn is basically about an 1,800-year-old piece of papyrus that was turned up in the city of Oxyrhynchus, or the ruins of the city of Oxyrhynchus, down in Egypt. And it was discovered and basically filed in an English museum, and it was discovered in the 1800s. So it's basically, as they're working through all of this papyri, they eventually turn up this particular piece, and they discover that it's the first or the earliest known Christian hymn. But the turning point, the amazing thing, is that they didn't just find the words, but the music was attached. And so we could, for the first time, know not just what Christians sang about, and in fact what they were singing about during one of the greatest periods of persecution the church has ever gone through, but also what they sounded like. And so the documentary is about not just that piece of papyrus, but bringing the song back to life. And it wasn't my idea. So the idea belongs strongly to Professor John Dickson, who is the host of the documentary, who was sitting in a papyrology vault 8 years ago, looking through a microscope at a brown piece of paper and thinking to himself, why hasn't anybody brought this song back to life? And there you have it. That's how he started the idea, and he recruited me 3 years ago into the project as the director and scriptwriter.
I mean, we've all been there, you know, sifting through ancient papyri in our lab.
Mate, I've got to tell you, look, I may be jumping ahead in your storyline, but when we filmed in Egypt, and so this documentary goes all over the world, and when we filmed in Egypt, we went to the ancient city of Oxyrhynchus, and it was like an Indiana Jones episode. I kid you not. I had to climb down into a subterranean tomb, and what they told me as I was going down was, beware of the snakes. Because
what?
I know.
Come on!
I kid you not. And there were large fallen statues, the god Osiris, and there were tombs. And you know, it was, if I didn't have a bullwhip and a hat, I should have. You know, it was quite amazing to go and find, to discover this city. And this city is kilometers wide and long, so to speak, and yet it's all buried by the sands. It was the second largest city in Egypt at the time that the papyrus was written, and so it was a large metropolis, and yet it was swallowed by the desert. It is just, like, honestly, Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's what we're talking about.
I mean, I'm sure you fulfilled the lifelong dreams of many a young person around the world. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was an interesting moment. My lifelong dream is to wield a lightsaber, but that's for another time.
Perhaps one day.
Perhaps one day.
Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, often we get you on as a media critic, but you are a filmmaker and you've been making films for quite some time. So I want to just pause a little bit on the first hymn and just talk a little bit about you and sort of your experience in this. Professor John Dickson, he's the history guy, he's the ideas guy. But as somebody who is also an ideas guy, I know that it's very valuable to have people around who can actually help you get things done. And you seem to be that kind of person who can get things done.
Well, okay, so what you're talking about now is a producer. So a producer is probably best thought about as the manager of the restaurant. You know, so they decide where the tables are going to go. They bring in the people who are going to do the interior decorating. They hire the chef. They work over the menu, and then they open the doors for people to come in. And a producer is pretty much the same thing. They basically oversee the hiring of staff, from directors through to directors of photography and other crew and things like that. They are responsible for all the sorts of permissions and access to locations that are necessary. You can't just go and film somewhere. You know, there's all sorts of laws depending on which country you're moving through. Then there's right down to the granular stuff like transport and where you're going to put your head at the end of the night and who's going to feed you. So all those sorts of things, hosts, actors, those sorts of things come down to production. And I've been producing, alongside my wonderful wife, I've been producing for probably well over 30 years now. And that's basically been, a great joy. It started in documentaries back in the 90s. And which, for those people who don't know what that is, it's a period we like to refer to as the previous century. As my boys like to say, my dad was born last century.
Well, that's okay. I was born last century as well.
There you go.
Although I rub shoulders with lots of people who were born post 2000, and it still blows my mind that there are people alive who don't remember, like, the Sydney Olympics or 9/11 or things like that.
Or who haven't seen Star Wars on a big screen.
That's right.
There you go.
Yeah. So you've been making movies and producing movies for well on 30 years now. What's that journey been like for you? And I guess what were you bringing to the particular production when you were setting out to work on the first hymn? Well,
my journey in documentaries actually began in audio documentaries. I started with the ABC back in 1992. somewhere around there. And as a journalist, I worked through, actually it's a lot earlier than that. Now, gee, I'm old. Okay, so back in the early 90s. And I worked on audio documentaries then, and I worked in the news. It's a kind of an interesting phase in history. We talk sometimes about, in this industry, about rolling tape or putting things down on tape and stuff like that. And back then, editing software literally meant cutting tape and sticking bits of tape together. And so I remember doing that sort of stuff. But I was always interested in the long form story. So what 10 years in doing news, both in radio and television, taught me was that 1.5 minutes is just not long enough to find out anything other than it just happened, and then you've got to leave it to move on to something else. And so for me, the romance of the long form story was what captured me. And yet I came from a factual background, so not a fictional background. So I was always thinking about long form factual stories, documentaries in themselves. I started producing them for the 7, 9 and 10 networks. And then I moved through those sorts of things. They were usually like 30-minute episodes. And then long form things, moved into working in various countries. So to date, I have worked in 26 different countries, just filming on location in various places. And yeah, I think the breadth of role stretches from producer, which is where I started, and to script writing and directing as well. But it really just depends on what the project requires. But that's what I have been doing, yeah. It is still a source of fascination to my parents that you can pay off a house by telling stories. This is, for a working class background, this is somewhat difficult to understand. I love my parents. They just don't know. They're always in the position of, are you sure you're okay for money? Do we need to help? But so far, we're paying off a house, and I've got 3 kids. So, we do seem to somehow squeak by. So, yeah.
Well, that's good to know. All our listeners will be very relieved.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for those of you who might be considering sending food aid. No need at this point, but we will stay in touch just in case.
Very good. So tell us about the production of the first hymn. It's obviously, as you mentioned, a film that spans continents and vast tracts of time. You talk to experts in many different fields of study, and it ends with a fairly, I guess for a Christian audience, fairly recognizable set of musicians who play a significant role at the end of the film. So tell us a little bit about what was the production like from your perspective, where you're standing, the Mark Hadley perspective on this whole thing.
Sure. It's not the glamorous perspective. Look, I work solidly behind the camera, about 2 steps behind the director of photography, as we do those sorts of things. Look, the story for me began on a driveway in one of the northern Sydney suburbs, where John Dickson, who we've known each other for a very long time and worked together, and John said to me, I've got this idea for a documentary, we should talk. And it began with a coffee meeting, and it was a stupendous idea. I mean, why would you not want to bring an ancient piece of music from the 3rd century AD into the 21st century? Why wouldn't you want to give it back to the church, so to speak? And not just the church in one particular country, but the world. What if the world could start singing this song again? What sort of connection or fellowship could you have between Christians then and Christians now? So as a sheer exercise in creativity, it was going to be an interesting process. What it was going to be, I found out fairly quickly, was a very intense negotiation between countries, between museums, and also between musicians. So it had everything from administrative nightmares through to creative collisions, you could call them, and yet I think the whole way through, God was very gracious. Lots of things went wrong. I don't want to say like it was a small, just a walk in the park. But even the things that went wrong directed us to better results, and that's God all over. But I think if we were going to take the first step in the documentary, we did things a little different. Most people are probably aware that when you film a film, you film it out of order. And that's just because, for the logistical reasons, you probably have to film all scenes in one location at once and then move on to the next location. We filmed this documentary out of order, and we kept on discovering as we were doing things, more things that we actually had to film. And the idea was in flux. Which musicians would be involved, where they would be based. Were they going to be a choir or an orchestra, or were they going to be traditional, contemporary music and Christian music musicians? And it turned out they were all of them. And so this production has involved choirs in 2 countries, Egyptian singers. It's involved, as you say, 2 very notable Christian contemporary music musicians. I don't think there's any problem in saying who they are because they're amazing. Ben Fielding, who of course is known for the Creed, which is another ancient document that was brought into life, though not as old as the first hymn. And obviously he's a Grammy Award winner and multi-Dove Award winning artist. And then there's Chris Tomlin, who is another level above that, who is amazing. More than 1 billion streams of his music across the planet, quite possibly, according to Time magazine, the most sung artist on the planet. So many million people sing his songs every week in churches. So these 2 people very graciously said, we'd love to be involved. In fact, they were excited. You couldn't keep them away from the project once we told them about it. And yet, writing a song is not something you can say, okay, well, look, just take a couple of days off, write the song, and come back. So the logistical nightmares of trying to bring all of this together, culminating in a massive concert in Fort Worth, Texas, were just fun. I mean, I had hair when we began this production. It's like, it's now
that bad, is
it's
it?
That bad. No, it was a great process. And everybody in my industry will talk about their, the production that might be their career highlight. You actually work on project after project after project, and God has been gracious, and my projects have been of increasing size and significance over the last 30 years. And you have your favorites, but this one is by far and away the biggest, most complicated thing I've ever had to do. It was massive. And I'm just very, very thankful for all the great people who made it happen. I felt very much like a maestro of an orchestra. They were very, very talented people involved in this production.
Talk about the scale from start to finish. Sort of how long did it take for this to go from that idea in that driveway to the red carpet premiere?
The carpet, I believe, was blue.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. Yes. No, because of course that's a detail everybody really wants to know. The whole process from concept, in terms of like the first production conversation, through to the American premiere, was about 3.5 years, okay. And that sort of thing just becomes your, nightly dream and waking nightmare, as you sort of just think about pretty much nothing else, for that period. In fact, it made me a very, very boring person to be around at dinner parties and things like that, because people would say, oh, well, what are you doing? And I'd tell them the same story I told them 3 months ago, and would continue to tell them, to the point where my the doctors I have, who I might only see once a year, were talking about the same documentary for 3 years. So, it was an interesting process. The American launch was stunning. For me, I've had launches. Obviously, God's been gracious, and I've had launches in various places at various times. But I've never been to one where people were lined up for a quarter of a mile to come into the cinema. That was a very strange, a surreal moment. When you just started by having coffee with somebody, and then you'd finished with somebody, thousands, 1,000 people or so, just really excited to just come and see what you've done. That was a very interesting process, and funny too, because you had to walk past the line, and so for blocks you looked like you were cutting the line. And then I actually got up to the front door where they were actually showing it, and there were security guards, and I had to say, "Oh, could I come in? I'm the director. Is that okay if I?"
Who do you think you are? Come on.
So, "I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to get back to the end of the line." So it was fun. It was a laugh, and it was really, really exciting to be part of as well.
How does it feel to be? I don't know how much you and John have been thinking through what it's like to be giving something back to the church. I know you mentioned that at the very beginning with this concept of this is a film that potentially a lot of people are going to see, but potentially the song that comes out of it might endure even more than the hymn. I suppose you probably hope so.
Yes, I mean, that's really the hope. The documentary is a blast. People should see it. It's an incredible arc, from the deserts of Egypt through to the concert in Nashville. Sorry, the work in Nashville, and then the concert in Texas. But the process of delivering something which you hope will live on as a popular song is just a huge privilege. Now, I don't mean to say that, it's wonderful to be involved with releasing just a popular song. I mean, there are artists who do that all over the world all the time. But with this particular one, we were forging a link between Christians who had been suffering immense persecution towards the end of the 3rd century. I mean, this is the period when you're talking about things taking place in colosseums with lions and crucifixions and stuff like that. This is the reign of Emperor Diocletian, and the terrifying things that were happening to Christians who were being arrested and executed all over the empire. And they were brave enough, confident enough in what they believed to sing a song about God being the giver of all good gifts, is one of the lines. And that's always impressed me, because as the giver of all good gifts, he gives trouble as well. And that's somehow to be reinterpreted as, God's mercy and blessing on us. And so these people had to say that in a circumstance which we would find incredible that anybody would maintain that was a blessing from God. Yet they saw it that way, so much so that they wrote a song so they could sing about it to each other. And now here we are, the better part of 2,000 years later, and people often look at the Christian church and say it is a foolish thing, it is a weak thing, it is passing away and means nothing. In this sort of persecution environment, it is amazing to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder, holding hands with Christians who faced much worse, and sing of God, the only giver of all good gifts, and to have a testimony toward that. So yes, I hope the song itself, which was the goal of the documentary, I hope the song far outlasts it. I hope to wander into a church one day, 10 years from now, and hear somebody singing it. And just be able to be thankful that it's there. Not because we had anything to do with it, but because God brought it back. And I sometimes wonder if the person who was writing that song, in the 200s, just would have any idea of the effect that they would have on the world. I find that an incredible thing. I find that's God all over. We do our little bit, and we offer what we have, our cup of cold water in a situation that seems hopeless. And God says, these things don't fail to become part of his plan for the blessing of other people. And so I really look forward, to the song persisting, but also the fellowship, the idea of us being able to connect with something, with a rich heritage of people trusting in God.
Final question. I know that this journey, must feel like such a blur at this point. You've been through all of this with all of these people, and you've created something that, you and the rest of the team can be truly proud of. Are there any special moments or perhaps challenging moments or whatever from this project that, you'll think about for years to come?
Yeah, I think there are a couple. One on one end of the spectrum is the truly terrifying. As a director, watching a situation you've set up, filming a live concert with about 16 cameras, and being able to capture something at every angle and praying all the way through that just the tape is rolling, that will walk away. I don't think I was ever so happy to see a hard drive in my life, when we finally, and then duplicating hard drives just in case something was to die on an aircraft on the way back. So, that's an amazing memory. But seeing a stadium of people singing a song, and taking joy in that'll be very, very hard to forget. But I think there are quieter moments. I think that there was a moment when my wife, who I said is also a producer and worked on the project, she was able to organize some insurance. Now, that doesn't sound like much.
It's thrilling stuff.
It
Mark.
is
Come on.
thrilling. But if you can't get equipment into a country, you can't film it. And, it was one of those little jobs that took months to organize and no one will ever know about. So here am I telling you. And that is God's little bit. And that's that little bit that you give to God that makes something much, much larger possible. So when, my wife came to me and said, "Oh, the insurance is in place," I breathed a huge sigh of relief, but I was really, really happy for her too, because she had that moment, which we both knew would contribute to something much larger. And yeah, look, if you're out there, let me just hijack the whole interview for a second. If you're out there and you're questioning the value of what you do for God, you have very little concept this side of eternity, how it is all going to fit together, but it is worth doing it well and to the best of your ability. How does the Bible put it? That we will do all things as though we were doing them for Christ. And I would just encourage you not to look at your work as a believer as something that you just have to do to get by. These little things have large reverberations in eternity.
Well, thank you, Mark. If people want to see the film in Australia, New Zealand, and they want to stream the song, get it into their local church, what do they have to do?
Look, the best thing to do to know where, because there's a staggered release across the world at various times. So if you were to go to thefirsthymnmovie.com, so I'll just say that again, thefirsthymnmovie.com, or for that matter, just Google The First Hymn, you'll find the website. And it's very, very easy to see where you can catch it in a cinema, or where it's available to stream and how you can pick it up. This job isn't over. It has another year of distribution and publicity to go through, which I'm not looking forward to. So, but look, thefirsthymnmovie.com is the first place you want to go, and you'll find out everything you need to know. You'll be able to get music for the song, listen to the song itself. All of these sorts of things are available there.
Perfect. We'll pop those in the show notes. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Mark, for bringing this into the world and for chatting with us today.
Always happy to, you know that.